And then October 7th happens. And of course, there's this weird thing that happens where it's like everybody else talks about Israel, but if I talk about Israel, then it's because I'm peculiarly focused on Israel as opposed to everyone else who's not. I mean, it seems like pretty much everybody's focused on that right now.
Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire have been under attack from all different angles recently. Patrick Bet-David and Valuetainment are some of the people who are normally very, very center-leaning when it comes to the right-wing, arguments that are happening between Tucker Carlson and the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, all this stuff. But it seems like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire have just gone a little bit too far this time, where all the people who are normally just, like I said, they don't take sides. They're just discussing what's happening. They don't take hard stances. All these people, like Patrick Bet-David, are now taking the side against Ben Shapiro. And now Ben Shapiro is kind of forced to respond to people like Patrick Bet-David and their criticisms of Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. And he did that live on this podcast here. Let's check out this clip of Ben Shapiro responding to Patrick Bet-David and people like Andrew Schultz criticism of Ben Shapiro and what he's been saying about the stuff that's happening in the Middle East.
But the question I wanted to ask you, Ben, is you and personally and the Daily Wire broadly have paid a price for having this conversation in the way that you've been. People like, I think there was a clip of Andrew Schultz and Patrick Bet-David talking about how it's, if they called it the Israeli Wire, then that would be fine. And all of
He's seething, by the way. He's pissed at that. Like, even him bringing up that question, you can just tell his facial expression, his mannerisms. He is pissed off right now.
This other stuff. And, I'll be honest, when I look at your Twitter feed, you have been very focused on what's happening in Israel. What do you make of those criticisms?
I mean, when it comes to my Twitter feed, that's largely because Twitter is dominated by this conversation. So, I mean, here's the thing. If you look at the vast panel...
Well, your Twitter feed is number one, it's curated to what your interest, If you look at the For You page and it's all Middle East stuff, and that's because that's what you're interested in. That's because that's what you tweet about. That's what you interact with. For me, I'm tired of seeing all the war stuff. So I'm muting everything. I'm muting, all the buzzwords involved in this Middle East war. I'm just tired of it. The thing is, Americans, we shouldn't care as much as we do about this war in the Middle East. We care way too much. And I'll explain why later on when Ben Shapiro goes into why he cares about it. And I'm going to tell you why it's all nonsense and why you shouldn't care so much about it. But I'm tired of seeing it. So I don't see much of it on my For You page. So it's dominated on your Twitter feed, Ben Shapiro's, because that's what he tweets about. That's what he interacts with. So obviously that's what it's dominated by.
Of episodes that I've done over the course of, I've been doing my podcast since 2015. It's almost 10 years. If you look at the vast majority of those episodes, I don't think I mentioned Israel once until October 7th. I mean, that's an exaggeration. I mentioned it, but not very much. The amount of time that I talked about Israel on my podcast was, as a percentage of total time on the podcast, I'd venture to say significantly less than 1%.
And that's because the mainstream media and the mainstream narrative around the Middle East stuff, the conflicts that have been happening, has always, the only acceptable opinion has been the one that Ben Shapiro holds. Now, ever since October 7th, people are discussing the topic more. There's more opinions coming into the fold, and there's more facts and evidence that is being presented by third parties that aren't just mainstream media. So we can actually just analyze the facts and use logic in our own brains to decide which side we're on, if any side at all. For me personally, I'm not taking a side in the war. I think it's ridiculous for Americans to take such passionate sides in this war that has nothing to do with us and that very obviously has bad things happening on and being done to both sides of this war. There's no black and white answer, in my opinion, unless you have some other loyalties to one of the countries in the war. There's no black and white answer, in my opinion, which is why it bugs me that so many Americans take such hard stances on this. The reason why you haven't had to talk about this certain country that Ben Shapiro loves so much is because the only acceptable opinion for the longest amount of time has been the one that Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire hold and want to, continue to push further. Now that there's other opinions that are being accepted and talked about a whole lot more, you're forced to address it because you cannot hold your tongue when it comes to this because your loyalty lies over there. Your loyalty lies to your real favorite country over in the Middle East.
And then October 7th happens. And of course, there's this weird thing that happens where it's like everybody else talks about Israel, but if I talk about Israel, then it's because I'm peculiarly focused on Israel as opposed to everyone else who's not. I mean, it seems like pretty much everybody's focused on that right now. So when it goes out of the news, I'll be more than happy to not talk about Israel. It's a very contentious and difficult discussion to have with a lot of people, particularly on X, which has turned into a cesspool in a lot of ways.
Always has been.
Yes. I mean, yes. But I will say that the changes in X, which again, I'm a big Elon fan. I like that Elon has opened up X. I've even been an advocate of people who I think are absolutely despicable being allowed back on X because I think that his attempt to create a free marketplace of ideas is more important than...
I love when people say this, like what Ben Shapiro just said. I've even been an advocate for people who I absolutely hate or disagree with to be able to speak on Twitter. It's like, oh, bro, you're so righteous. Like, what do you want me to say to that? Congratulations. You actually believe in free speech, which you don't. You fired Candace for simply having an opinion that wasn't your own and the one that you wanted represented by the Daily Wire. But you want us to like say that you're this super righteous person because you think that other people should be allowed to speak on social media? Congratulations, dude. You're super righteous. I just can't stand when people say stuff like that.
My personal level of emotional comfort when it comes to X. I will say that the policing there in terms of virality is not very good. That there are a lot of bot accounts, there's a lot of spam. Like I think a lot of those things can be simultaneously true, even while I'm very, very happy that Elon took it over and opened it up. With that said, as far as the idea that the Daily Wire is quote unquote the Israeli Wire or something, we have hosts who completely disagree with me on Israel. Right? Matt Walsh, right, believes, and I've had discussions with him about this, that America should have no business giving foreign aid at all to Israel or pretty much anyone else.
Matt Walsh is becoming like the token like women on sports talk, or like the token black people in certain areas of life. He's becoming like the token Ben Shapiro's favorite country hater when they don't ever actually let him speak about it. He doesn't actually speak about it. Every time he tries to give his opinion on these backstages that they do with the group podcast that the Daily Wire does, they cut him off every single time. I've done multiple videos on this and live streams watching these episodes. Every single time Matt Walsh tries to speak about these topics, he gets cut off by Ben Shapiro or Jeremy Boring, who tell him, no, actually, this is the opinion that's acceptable. Every single time. I promise. Go watch them. Go watch my past videos where that I did on those. Matt Walsh is becoming like a token to where Ben Shapiro can just go parade around Matt Walsh and say, he disagrees with me on this, so therefore, I'm not anti-free speech. It's just nonsense, dude.
I disagree with him. I think that that's a wrong perspective in my viewpoint. That's a different thing from perspectives that have been articulated by other people. I don't think Matt has a lack of moral clarity between, say, Hamas and the Democratic State of Israel. That is a slightly different proposition. As far as, again, my personal focus on this, I'm personally focused on this for a couple of reasons. I will freely admit that I have a level of emotional investment in...
If you enjoy content like this, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
A state that was created for the safety of Jews and is historically tied to my religion. Of course, that's true. And I'd be ridiculous not to simply say that that's the case. I also have a stake in this because, again, I think it's a civilizational question. And it is bewildering to me how so many members of the West seem to have a difficulty in finding moral clarity between an openly genocidal terror group in Hamas and an Israeli government that is currently engaged in a bipartisan war cabinet that is trying to bring humanitarian aid in the middle.
Yeah, okay. Nobody has an issue with saying that Hamas is bad. Nobody has an issue. Like, terrorist attacks are bad, guys. Please crown me. Throw your bouquets at me, please. I'm so righteous. Terrorist attacks are bad. Yes. Congratulations, Ben Shapiro. You're so righteous, man. You're so righteous. What I have a problem with is obviously not people saying that Hamas is bad. That's common sense, human rationale. Like, you don't have to say it. We should all know that Hamas is bad. Although I will say that people like Hassan Piker and those guys, they don't really admit that very much, if ever at all. So I don't like to align with those people either, obviously. But the fact that Ben Shapiro says that we can't even accept that Hamas is bad is just, it's so bad faith. Obviously, I think Hamas is bad, but when you see, my issue with the whole thing is you see these quote unquote targeted attacks at Hamas result in Gaza just being leveled, like cities in Gaza, buildings in Gaza just being absolutely leveled. And then you see people who I thought were rational human beings, that I've heard discuss other topics. And I'm like, okay, you know what you're talking about. You seem to be rational, well thought out opinions, things like that. They'll respond to these tweets of Gaza being leveled and say things like, don't start wars, insinuating that the innocent people who died in those buildings, maybe along with a couple of Hamas members, who knows, innocent people who most definitely died, elderly, women, children, possibly. I mean, we've seen pictures, but who knows how true they are. I don't know. I can't fact check them myself, so I don't know. But I'm sure that there's many, many innocent people who have died, and they'll say things like, don't start wars, insinuating that those innocent people shouldn't have started this war when they did not do that. That's where I'm like, okay, people's brains are just broken. I have to speak on this. Like, I just have to. People's brains are broken. Ben Shapiro's included. Like, commenting "Don't start wars" is just such an insensitive thing, and that's not just the only thing that I've seen that's insensitive about the whole thing. It's just so obvious that these people are so biased and they're so brainwashed. Like they're so, I don't even know what the word is. Their opinion is just so cemented that they'll never allow themselves to change an opinion that they have. They always just look for facts and evidence to uphold the current opinion that they have, instead of looking at the facts and evidence and trying to form the best opinion based around the information provided that they can, which is kind of the approach that I like to take. Ben Shapiro and Ben Shapiro's supporters, the Daily Wire supporters, they're not like that. They just want evidence that supports their already formed opinions.
Of a conflict with an enemy that's stealing the humanitarian aid while risking its own citizen soldiers in that combat. I mean, that I find absolutely not only bewildering, but dangerous. I mean, I think there's a reason why people are being assaulted for carrying American flags into the center of many of these protests. Right? It'd be one thing if people were getting assaulted for carrying Israeli flags, which again, I've seen throughout my life. That's nothing new. But people getting assaulted.
This guy is trying to play the victim so much. The college protest stuff is just a clown show all around. Palestinian supporters, you know, the pro-Palestinian protesters are people who hate America. They're the same people who protested for BLM. They'll take any chance they get to protest, you know, to be anti-American. They know that most of America have been fed, you know, the narratives that they should support Ben Shapiro's favorite country. So they know if they go out there and they're pro-Palestinian, it'll be edgy. It'll be, you know, they're rebellious. They hate America. So obviously the frat boys know, okay, these people just hate America. I know how to trigger them. Let's go bring out American flags. And obviously it does end up triggering them because they do hate America. It's just frat boys who are trying to trigger the wokest out there, and wokies who just hate America, protesting under the guise of they're pro-Palestinian. In reality, they're not. They just hate America. The whole college protest stuff is just a complete clown show all around. None of them care. Maybe I'll say 95% of them don't care about anything happening in the Middle East. It's just people who hate America and people who like to trigger people who hate America. That's the only thing that's going on over there. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you're thinking about Ben Shapiro's response to Patrick Bet-David and the rest of the people mentioned that really did go after Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, and continue to go after Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire for their comments about the stuff happening in the Middle East and the people who, you know, firing Candace Owens and things like that. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this whole Ben Shapiro situation.